Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 19th episode of Coffee with Ashish Season 2. And today we've got a very special guest with us. And in fact, a bit strange also. We got our guest is also Ashish Kumar. So it's pretty interesting to have you with us, Ashish. Ashish is the founding partner of Trekata, which is a professional travel, tax, and advisory firm specializing in a range of solutions for corporate businesses, including comprehensive GST reco. We are all aware of how GST reco is such a nightmare for so many travel companies, and that's what Trakata is helping them with. And also helps optimize processes for travel procurement and tax efficient travel purchase management for designing an efficient travel procurement program. With a specialty in finance and business strategy, Ashish is responsible for delivery of transactional experience and service to customers for their needs pertaining to operational support, tax consulting, and advisory. He's got experience of more than 13 years in finance and taxation domain, fabricated into travel industry. Ashish carries preference in advising a lot of Fortune 500 companies and large Indian business houses on wide variety of matters related to business travel management, customer experience, and strategy. He also is extremely proficient in business travel solutions, customer solutions, finance, and taxation
Mhm.
management. Ashish has also served at various positions in consulting firms like Ernst& Young, KPMG, and BMR Advisors, with special emphasis on international tax and goods and service tax solutions, value chain structuring, and tax advisory. His previous experience with Carlson Wagonly Travels as head of tax and controller, has been amazing, where he was specifically responsible for customer experience and tax solution. So I think I can safely say to both the Ashish, I think this is for the first time we've got somebody who's got rich experience around finance, taxation, and advisory in the travel space for corporate. So, which is a first of its kind in our show. So, with this, a very warm welcome to you, Ashish Kumar, and I'm going to request the original Ashish Kumar to welcome you and have a conversation with you while I sit back and enjoy my coffee.
Thanks, Karthik. That's very generous of you to give us such a good introduction. And I'm very happy to be and excited to be on this program. I've been following it ever since it started back in the bad old days of the lockdown. So I don't think I missed even a single episode. So whether I'm able to hear it or catch it up later. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, coming back to lockdown, specifically remember 14th March 2020 was our first episode. And exactly on the 20th of March this year, which is 2021, we are going to be running into our 75th episode.
Absolutely.
And as far as the scheduling is concerned, we do it about 2 or 3 months in advance, and we are well scheduled up to June. So hopefully we will continue beyond. Because the purpose of the show, since you've been watching, is not only to transfer knowledge to people who would join in, but not only help them revive and survive, but also to thrive going forward. Because we do believe that there will be a thrive. The question is only how long would it take and how would we survive and so on and so forth. And I think in the subject we are going to be talking today, there are some very important components actually. So let's start. While the COVID has been hurting in many ways, and businesses have been, of course, specifically hurt. Let's talk about the impact on travel agents, the travelers and the corporates from your perspective, and then we'll get down directly to taxation matters.
Sure. So Ashish, it's been I would say I won't mince my words. I'm being very straightforward. It's been a very, very bad period for the corporate travel agents and the TMCs, as we call them fondly, which has had their direct impact because the corporates, who are the ultimate consumer of the service, are not consuming it. Simple as that. Initially, it was extremely bad. Talking to my circle, talking to people around, they were in a distress, and I've known people who had like 15, 20 years of experience virtually having no work. It has revived a bit, but I won't say a lot. The current traffic level, if on an industry-wide basis, is not more than maybe 15 or 20%, stretching up to 25%. Again, the same thing when we talk to our corporates and our clients, they don't intend to travel. The intent is not there. So one is that, okay, when this travel or the corporate travel will revive. That's one part of the question. The second is, do they really want to travel even after that? This whole vaccine and the positive news that is coming out, and with that, with the blessing of our government, we had some positive news. But again, the response is not very encouraging from a corporate travel side. If we talk of the leisure travel, yes, and I'll just touch very briefly on that. The traffic is picking up. People are traveling. In fact, 2 weeks back, I was in Goa with my family, and I was amazingly surprised to see the amount of occupancy that these hotels were having. But these are all leisure travelers. So, in a nutshell, it's going to take a long time. And even after that, I have my doubt that a travel in that original form or original traffic levels and that is ever going to come back. So I'm not very hopeful. But even if I have to see a revival, it's not very near. It's at least 2 or 3 years away from us, right?
Yeah, I tend to share your sentiments, and like they say, one swallow does not make a summer. People have looked at weekends in Goa and weekends in Missouri to be chock-a-block full, and we have, of course, got
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
enthusiastic to think travel is reviving. But if you look at the overall pie, whether it's MICE or whether it's corporate travel, I think that contributes equally to about 50 to 60% of hotel occupancies in the country, outside the country, flights, trains, commute, whatever.
Yeah.
Even the corporate travel, I was just quickly to share with you, when I was talking to the bus rental guys, the red bus, for example, on a route between Chennai and Bangalore, or Hyderabad and Bangalore, 40% of the travelers are corporate travelers. Little do we realize on the bus route, because they are these techies who go across one city to another.
Yeah, Ashish, that's true. But see, the end of the day, if the TMCs and these bigger agencies or even the smaller agencies, mid-level, they have to survive. A low ticket value, like a bus ticket or say a very base level room, that is not going to give them the impetus or the revenue to survive for a very long time. Yes, there is certain bit of travel that is happening on even on
Correct.
the corporate side,
Correct.
but if when we compare it to say a period of January or February of 2020, when we used to believe that every day when we used to go to a Delhi airport or a Mumbai airport, there were lines and queues of people in their suits ready to board a plane. Those days are little far away from us.
Right.
And even if we get there, it's going to be the intent. The question is now an intent, whether I want to travel or not, whether I want to expend as a CEO of a company, whether I want to expend that money to on my employees to travel, or whether they can do this Zoom call like we are doing.
Yeah. So the intent is a very specific word, and that's what I meant even in the bus circuit, because it's the same thing. People are saying, I mean, do I want to risk an overnight bus? Let me just do a Zoom, because a lot of work does get done on Google Meets and Zooms, and but
Yeah, it does.
so therefore, for corporate travel and business specific travel, to stabilize, we are staring at a long end of the pipe.
Yes. Yes.
And hopefully what may evolve after that is something which we might cherish later. But like I said, that window is very
Yeah, that would be a new normal.
that'll be a new
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
But let's just get back to the leisure business for a bit. And so there's so much being spoken about the TCS pre-COVID, because it had been announced just pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I have my own particular views, of course, on TCS, and we all know why it's been bought into. It hasn't been bought in to hurt the packaging business, but it's been bought in for a specific purpose, as far as the government is concerned. So, what are your thoughts on this altogether?
See, again, going back to my tax consulting days, when we used to sit with used to have a consultation with the policymakers and have a roundtable in the ministry, the intent was very clear that a lot of, and this I'm talking in the period of 2008, 9, 10, and 11,
Right.
when this whole e-commerce and digital transactions were just opening up in India. People didn't have a clue, okay, how do we tax a transaction? Say a company A sitting say, in Mauritius, having their corporate office in Mauritius, selling a hotel room of ITC Grand Rajputana Jaipur in India to an Indian customer. How do they tax it?
Hmm.
Yeah. or someone is selling a complete package sitting outside India to an Indian consumer. End of the day, you are generating revenue on the Indian territory. How do we tax that? And this whole concept of digital tax and how do we structure it? So that was the intent back then. Then it evolved into a simple concept, and there was an amendment which was brought into the law where we added, where the government added a section on which was called TCS in front of the TDS. TDS, we all know it's been a
Yes.
very old concept. Anything we, okay, if I earn something, there is a tax which is deducted at source from my client.
Mm.
Now, TCS, the intent was very clear to get these online people or international, I'll tell you the primary intent was to get these international companies in the tax bracket or the tax net, as they call it. It was not to deter or to make life more difficult for the Indian travel agents who are anyway sitting on a wafer thin margins when we are talking of packages or hotels or even air. Air is the most less margin that we call it. So intent was very clear. Then this law was brought. Again, anything where a travel agent or an Indian, whether it's Indian travel agent or an international company or it's online, offline, whatever the channel or mode is, the moment they sell a package which is outside India, and again, this is an extension to the liberalized scheme of remittance. The moment they sell anything outside India, they had to have a tax which was deducted at the rate of 5%. Now, pre-COVID, there was a lot of discussion around this, and there was a lot of, I think, TAFI and a lot of other associations also gave their submissions to the government that they should defer it or even look at it from a perspective of lowering the percentage of tax. But thankfully, for now, when this COVID hit us, this whole TCS just took a backseat because the priority was not to collect the tax because there was no travel happening. End of the day. So intent is very clear. How do we get more tax or how do we widen up the tax base or taxpayers? Uh, how does the government get the money out of them in form of the TCS that would be collected? And also this gives an impetus to the government to even track down individuals as to who is spending the money, because a high value spender, they get to know about that also. So intent is multifold. It's not a simple thing that, okay, I just want to tax you. So at multiple levels, the intent was very clear. First, to get these international companies, these online companies, then the people who are traveling abroad on these packages, to get them also in the tax net, so
Right.
that they start to file their tax returns.
Right, right. So I think I'll latch on to the second part of what you said. And that's always been my thought, that was it a matter of a 5% or a 0.5%? What if it was 0.5%? You would still be able to get those people into the tax net. You'll still be able to bring the transparency. So what are we talking about? I mean, that's always been my thought, that I think the government's intent, if I'm not reading the government's mind, was, like you said, not really tax the traveler, but to bring it into a tax net and bring in transparency to remittance was happening. But of course, the downside of this, just to add before you come in, of course, was internationally registered company who could do it. But recently I read, of course, that there is a taxation, 2% taxation, I think, on a gross of international company on e-commerce coming in. Will it level the thoughts here, or would it make a difference?
So that's a different regime or a different intent. So I'll talk about that also. Just to answer the first question,
Yeah.
The purpose, again, as I said, the purpose of this tax introduction of this TCS was very clear. It was twofold. One, to get these international and online companies in to pay their taxes or at least file the returns in India, because end of the day they are generating revenue out of India, so they need to give something back also. And there, the not getting very technical, there is this concept of PE, which is permanent establishment. Now, that's a topic for another day. But
Yeah.
how do I tax an international company? Second, say if Ashish Kumar is traveling abroad to Europe, how, if and Ashish Kumar is paying say 5 lakh, 10 lakhs for a holiday with the family, I am in that bracket of paying, and I should be paying the right taxes. So
Right.
that also, to say whether it should be 5% or 2% or even 0.5%, it really doesn't matter. But having said that, a 0.5 or a 1% doesn't really add to the revenue because there is an administrative cost of managing any process that the government gets.
Right.
There has to be a tax officer who would do the scrutiny, who would do the audits. There are notices which are sent, there are hearings. So there is a whole gamut of administrative process, and it's a costly process. Trust me. You have to have a full-time employees. They have to. They are. So in order to manage that, yes, I believe very fundamentally, the intent was right. The application is also right. It's just that people in India have to start paying the taxes, the correct taxes.
Mm.
I'm strictly against tax terrorism. That's been my subject for last 13 years.
Right.
Been having multiple hearings with multiple tax authorities. There are times when there have been cases of tax terrorism. I'm not, and again, I'm saying I'm not mincing my words. Again,
Right.
coming from this background, yeah.
Sure.
On the second part, where you said that whether that new regime is coming, I think we are talking about this TCS on e-commerce company,
Correct.
if I'm not wrong.
Correct. Correct.
Now, again, Ashish, that is a very ambiguous concept. Now, who is an e-commerce? Whether an Amazon is an e-commerce or a Make My Trip is an e-commerce. Now, if I fundamentally look at the business of both the companies, it's almost the same for me. And we have been represent, and I was fortunate enough to represent MMT back in 10 when they were getting listed through my PMR days. Uh, the business model is not very different between Flipkart or an Amazon or an MMT. End of the day, they are a platform where someone is a seller, someone is a buyer. Now, for an MMT, and talking purely on a travel base, someone is an airlines, an Indigo is selling a ticket, and Ashish Kumar is buying a ticket. Now, they are just a platform in between. But the whole difference becomes when as to which entity or who in this whole supply chain is managing the risk of holding that inventory. Now, in Amazon is through the cloud tail, they are doing what they are doing, but they are just listing. It's just a database, if I have to put it as a characteristic of the company. Same goes for MMT. So it has, so although the definition says, say, transaction of any digital good or service, end of the day, air ticket is a service or is a good. Again, those concepts are very ambiguous. Clarity has not yet come. There are a lot of consultations again with the department of with various departments and Ministry of Finance. So we are still waiting for that clarity to come whether a travel company would get a part of this TCS process, or whether we are talking purely e-commerce companies like your Paytms and Amazons and Flipkarts of the world.
Right. My own thought process would be that if you put in the bus tickets, the rail tickets, the hotel accommodation and air seats and everything together, including payments, then travel segment would be the largest e-commerce segment.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So if that be so, I mean, my travel folks may not like it. What's the difference between clothing, apparels, perfumery, and tickets? It's the same transaction.
Yeah, end of the day, I strongly believe, and this is something which I used to tell to all my Carlson colleagues also. Like, end of the day, we are selling commodity, nothing.
Right, right.
It's a commodity. I mean, there is no differentiation. If I buy a ticket from CWT or a MMT or a Yatra or anyone,
correct,
I'm still going to sit in that same seat.
Correct.
I'm not going to get any special benefit if I buy it from MMT.
Right.
Yeah. So it's end of the day, it's a commodity that you are selling.
Correct.
Same goes for a Flipkart or a Myntra or an Amazon. They're selling the same T-shirt or the same sweatshirt. It's just that whether we say that they form an e-commerce or not, yes, they do. And it purely, if I talk of this concept, this fancy word of GMV, gross mean value of a service or product, you're right. Travel would be the largest contributor to this e-commerce.
Right. Right. So let's talk about this catchword known as Atam Nirbhar, which is much touted about, and let's look at broader policies around it, and of course the tax arbitrage. How does it get built for the travel agent? What do you see ahead of that?
See, going ahead, first of all, one needs to be very clear who is a travel agent and who is not. Not travel again, and I just take help from this concept of this startup India, and in this recent budget that we had just like the last week, The definition of startup has been defined. It has been given an extension for a year that okay, one can get themselves registered
Sure.
and as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. But if I see, there are not more than, I think last statistics was about 439 startups in India.
Mm.
Now, do we see only 439 startups in India, out of which, if I say 50% are travel startups? Now, only 200 or 250 startups are we talking about? Or there are multiple companies, multiple organizations, and I see a lot of these young people doing a lot of interesting stuff around this travel. I mean, I met a person about 3 weeks, 4 weeks back in my office. So they were like, okay, we are building this robotic technology, which it is called a holiday design engine, where if say Ashish Kumar says, I'm in Delhi, I just want to go to Singapore and I don't know anything about Singapore. The process will start from, okay, talking about the flight, then it moved to the hotel, then it moved to visa, then it moved to, okay, what are you going to do there? What do you want to eat there? So everything will be pre-booked. Now, this is what they call as a holiday design engine.
Yeah.
Now, doing this is not one company's job. They are taking help from different resources. They
Oh,
need different
oh.
APIs, different logics. So, do I call them a travel startup, or do I call those 10 people who are supporting them as a as group of travel startups? So, one, the definition is very. So, one needs to be very clear whether they are a technology company or they are a travel company. Purely from a taxation perspective, the level playing field that we are talking about is never going to be there. And again, I'm not mincing my words. And why do I say that? The bigger companies or the bigger corporates, which have been there and are pretty established, have always they do have the advantage from a taxation perspective in terms of their from the scale of operation. The smaller companies will still struggle in order to be there and try to first of all have their ground on the feet, but it's a tough market that we are talking about, especially after corona. And with these recent changes in the amendment in the laws, and I'm recent when I say these 2 3 years, when we're talking TCS, when we are talking this TCS on e-commerce, it is going to put a level playing field for the newer companies. The older companies already have their processes sorted out, but definitely as now these international companies are also getting under the regime of this TCS, it would become a level playing field on a long run basis. But from a short to medium perspective, it is going to be bigger companies do have their advantage. They do have their tax or the tax systems pretty sorted out. The newer companies are going to struggle because the 2% or 1% is going to be very heavy
Yeah.
cost of doing the business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's purely from a transaction perspective. But you mentioned about level playing field. Yes, I see that getting leveler as time goes by. And talking about startups, I've always believed in India, not COVID, but even longer than COVID, that our startups do not get that kind of impetus in the existing travel industry ecosystem as do overseas. I'll give you a small example. I have somebody I mentor known as TraffStack. Now, TraffStack is a dynamic packaging company. There are two couple who started this, and they're just in the process of developing. And they got picked up by Singapore Tourism Board, who actually invited them to come over to Singapore, gave them a working visa for 1 year period, gave them space to work out of their office, and actually develop the product out of their office, which they're doing currently, and they're in touch with me. And more than that, they introduced them, and they're running a pilot for Chang Brothers, which is the largest wholesaler and holiday company in Singapore. I haven't seen this happening. That I would like to see more of the bigger travel companies.
Yeah,
run their own program.
I think talking of startups, the focus, whatever we may call it, Stand Up India, Startup India, Make in India. I mean, these are good to hear, but the question is on the right implementation.
Right.
I don't see that spirit of Silicon Valley in India. I don't see that. Okay, if I get up in the morning, if I have something with an idea or a minimum viable product or MVP as we call it, I can go to an investor and I can pitch. It's still unfortunately it's still a big boys game to get actual funding, real money in India, and especially with travel as an industry, I don't think anyone is really touching it in India right because yeah, it's pretty because it was first to be hit when the COVID hit us, and as everyone has been saying over and over again, it will be the last to revive.
Right.
It is reviving, but a full revival will be the last.
Right. So, lastly, of course, in many of my discussions, Ashish, I don't know if you tend to agree with me. I've said this nomenclature of OTA, which was really born in 2003 and 4 when Make My Trip first came into
MMT came,
picture,
yeah.
MMT time, OTA, online travel agent, and that's what it stood. I said, by time has come when it should be thrown out of the window because everybody is online. There is a question is only, are you assisted online or are you non-assisted online? Are you doing it yourself or somebody is helping you to? So even if you're the smallest travel agent in Bikaner, there is somebody you're logging into Sun system and putting it out online to be able to offer. Like I said, the difference is only assisted versus non-assisted. So therefore, to me, travel, whether we like it or not, and I've said it in various, even FICCI forums when we had debate, I said the time has come where travel companies portray to the government as, like I said, a large e-commerce entity rather than the same song of we are great employers of people, we earn so much percentage of GDP and we are foreign exchange earner. I said, that's good to have. I don't want you to drop it. But I want government to recognize that you contribute to the e-commerce, which the government, of course, is pushing. So the last question and the point I'm really making, what is the impact of e-commerce model you see on the outbound and overall travel tourism in terms of regulatory taxation framework? Though we have discussed already as we've been going, but what's your summarization of the whole thing in the next 2-3 year perspective?
So, yeah, so number one, definitely when we are talking about travel, it's no more an OTA. OTA was a concept when it was introduced.
Correct.
End of the day, you are an e-commerce company selling a service. You're not selling a physical product. You're not selling a T-shirt or food or anything else, but you're selling a service of an air ticket or a hotel or a package or whatever you may be selling. First of all, we have to start calling ourselves as e-commerce. After that, it's very important that the government recognizes us as an e-commerce. Now, that would come with its own share of problems and pluses and minuses.
Correct.
If I'm called an e-commerce, then those TCS on e-commerce rules would apply on me. If I myself, I'm going and saying, okay, boss, I am an e-commerce. Definitely, there would be an impact from tax and non-tax issues. But at least the travel industry as a whole gets a recognition that they truly deserve. Because if I go through all the FICCI seminars that we had in 2020, and I've been attending very, very regularly, and Meenakshi Lekhi ji has been there, a lot of people from the ministry has been there. I mean, there are commitments, but no one is actually pushing it end of the day. And saying that, okay, I am this leader of this whole pack. Let's go and request the government, push the government to recognize us. Because if I see the two packages that was given out by the Honorable Finance Minister and in this budget, I don't see anything specific for travel, which is the most hard-hit sector after Corona. And directly or indirectly, it does employ a lot of people. I mean, talk of a guide or a elephant guy in Jaipur, near Jaipur, that's Amir Fort.
Amber.
Is he part of the travel ecosystem or not? He is, because he is taking a lot of foreigners, a lot of us on that fort. Now, they are not recognized people, and that is the reason it is not getting accounted for. It's a very unorganized market. If you look at it, organized market is very less. I mean, how many ITA agents do we have? Or how many people are actually have that MOT certification? If you are not counted, you are not accounted for. I strongly believe in that. So first, the fundamental step is to get yourself counted, get accounted, and if the focus of the government is there, then definitely you would be picked up. The focus of government was not there for an e-commerce back in 2007-8. It got picked up because the moment you started to hurt, or I would say hurt is a strong word, but if affect these offline retailers, that's the point when the government took a note of these e-commerce companies. They are Amazons and Flipkarts, that they are serious contenders in this retail business.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if you became a data point in the whole e-commerce ecosystem, be it a
Yeah.
shikara on Dal Lake or that elephant ride on the thing, you would be a data point. And if you got integrated into the whole e-commerce space, then somebody would notice you. And if somebody would notice you, it's just like the Amazon or e-cars. You're selling a whole lot of goods and services. Everybody is a data point.
Absolutely.
You're a code. And
Yeah.
if you're a code, you're bound to get recognized somewhere as a code.
Absolutely. Data is the new gold, as everyone calls it. I mean, you need to have the
So
the the,
I,
the
I,
right
I,
push.
I agree with you, Ashish. I am myself been a very, very strong advocator of shifting the narrative of travel into our operating, where we just provide a services, be it in corporate travel, be it in holiday space, be it in even inbound,
Yeah.
and not owning any infrastructure as such. We are now to be narrative should be that we are the e-commerce and of course a very evangelized, very experiential, very value driven e-commerce, and
Yeah.
not purely buying a t-shirt as you see it as a code. But obviously there's a lot more skills which go into putting
Yeah. And also, last point. I mean, a lot of technology has to start playing out. I mean,
evolving. Yeah,
I mean, this again going back to my Carlson Wagonly days. A lot of processes were still offline, and I used to question, why are we still employing those fleet of people sitting in clients' offices and what we call it implants, and doing the same ticketing. Like, why can't we give access to people, to the employees? Okay, if they are busy, we can have some parallel process, but this cannot be on 100% cases. I mean, for
yeah,
a for a for a for a 50 rupee, 70 rupee revenue, you cannot have a person sitting there.
correct.
It's
And
just, it doesn't
and
make any
and
business.
Ashish, we all know, and Karthik here will of course come in the end because he's passionate about AI and he's doing things on AI, including education. But coming back, I've always believed, and I've told him that 70% of the role in, say, holiday industry is a repetitive job. It's the same question your counselor gets asked: how do I get there? What do I do? And what, how? And it's something which can be purely automated to be able to reach a level where a human voice comes in to add that value which is required, and not from the first call itself. And the
Yeah,
second,
yeah,
yeah, and the
yeah.
second
Sorry,
factor
sorry.
is we all know today, with the advertising, the way it's gone on digital, be it Google, be it even any other electronic market, that if you get 100 inquiries for a holiday company, there is a 2% materialization. So 98% of the calls are wasted calls. And imagine the human efforts which you spend in cost arbitrage into that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
your last thought before we
I,
conclude.
yeah, I call them the price hunters.
Yeah.
There,
And
there are people who will check like
no,
10 websites for the same stuff, call up 10 agents for the same stuff, and they will not transact, and they will transact with the 11th.
yeah. No, I think they have all right to do that. But I think as travel companies, they
No,
should have
we
all
have
right
to.
to be able to automate the processes and work in a manner that you work as efficiently and as in a cost reduced manner as possible.
Yeah.
If you think,
Yeah, in fact,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, go
as
ahead.
one of the, but one of, yeah, as one of the thoughts I gave in Carlson was, I said, okay, if people are on WhatsApp, why can't we get the transactions to happen on WhatsApp? I mean, it's a simple tool. We don't need to build another messenger or get people to adopt it. But say if I want to travel from Delhi to Mumbai, simple transaction. Person should not call us. Person should not hit our website. Just say Delhi Mumbai for this date, and this simple. You get options. Option one, click. How would you like to pay? Click. Done. The PNR and the ticket number comes. That's it. I mean, it's not required. So one needs to think beyond the normal. One needs to, and as you've correctly put it, you don't need human beings doing the simple transactional work, what used to happen 20 years back or even 15 years back. We have to start evolving and start moving away from that. People have to be trained enough, or they have to upskill their existing skills to be more
No.
efficient and more technology enabled.
Well, it has to happen. There are no option. 2008, when I got appointed as CEO for Reliance Retail to put travel into their retail stores, my own industry colleague said, "Are you wasting your time trying to sell air tickets with the groceries in Reliance?" But
Yeah,
today, in 2021, it's a reality. That's
yeah,
going to
it
happen.
is.
We've seen what Zio, the way they've moved, and how the whole platforms will move. So, yeah, Ashish, I mean, for guys like you who look at transactional in terms of taxations, in terms of the challenges which come in, I think there are a lot of challenges for you also, going forward into the new gig economy, going into the new e-commerce platform. So
Yeah, definitely. And Ashish, as soon as the travel industry was hit with COVID, we are also hit at the same time.
right,
I mean,
right,
we had rolled out everything. I mean, we had, if you look at our clientele, we're dealing with the Fortune 100, Fortune 500. But if they are not traveling, there's no work for us. End of the day,
right,
they have to, so with all positivity, I want them to travel, but I can't be lying to myself that okay, those volumes are gonna it's gonna take time for sure. There are no two ways about it. There would be newer taxation issues. There would be newer taxation problems. But the simple GST and GST again, it's a topic in itself, which has been settled pretty much by now. But it's corporate travel as a whole is definitely going to
right,
take time
right.
for everyone.
So I think my last closing statement, and I pass to Karthik, is when you can't fish, you mend your net. And I think this is the time to be mending your net for everyone. You have the
Absolutely,
time to do it. Let's do it now. And
absolutely.
thank you, Ashish, for being on Coffee with Ashish. It's a
Thank
good
you.
narrative you built in today. Over to you, Karthik.
No, no, thanks, Ashish. Lovely hearing from you. And I think you've given very practical advice and snippets of wisdom to all our audience members. Really appreciate you being with us. And I'm sure we'll catch up again in person post COVID. Thanks, Ashish Kumar. I don't know which one I'm referring to, but Ashish Kumar. Thank you so much for hosting this. And we look forward to seeing all our audience members on next Saturday. Thank you for joining in today. And again, once again, special thanks to you, Ashish, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
and
Karthik. Thanks,
stay
Ashish.
connected.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
sir.